There is no cause for alarm, but there probably will be.
So, all these people in China are going, hey, I love these bonds. So more people want to buy bonds. Well, the bank can't make bonds out of thin air. They got to make them by having mortgages. To get mortgages, people have to buy houses. So I need more and more and more and more people to buy houses. Now, some of these people who are going to start selling houses to really can't afford the houses. And they're getting what we call subprime loans. They're getting loans that they didn't really qualify for, maybe. What happens is this countrywide company starts filling in the forms from the bottom up. They actually train their employees to fill in the forms from the bottom up. So if you want $1 million home loan, you start with $1 million at the bottom of the form and you work up to fill in the blanks, so in the end it looks like you're qualified. You lie about your income. You lie about your assets and your liabilities. You lie, okay? So the people who bought these houses were lying. The people who were selling the houses were lying. Everybody knew that everybody was lying. But they wanted to create these bonds to sell to these bondholders. And again, why would I buy a house I can't afford? Well, they're going to set up a wacky loan, right? They're going to set up a loan where for the first 3 years, I pay $300 a month. And then after 3 years, I owe $3,000 a month. Okay? That's the way the loan's going to look. The idea is that I'm only going to own the house for 3 years. So I'm going to pay $300 a month for 3 years. At the end of that, house prices were going up in Las Vegas 20 to 30% a year. So I buy $1 million house. Okay? I buy $1 million house. I had students who did this. I had unemployed students who bought $1 million house because they were going to start their life together by making a lot of money off this $1 million house. So they buy this $1 million house and they're paying a few $100s a month. But they're going to have to pay $5,000 a month 3 years down the road. And they're unemployed. Okay, they're just college students. So they're paying a few $100s a month. They're paying for this $1 million house what they would pay rent in an apartment, a little tiny apartment. House prices have been going up 20 to 30% a year. So they were looking at making $600,000 or $700,000 on that $1 million house, selling it, taking that money. Okay, and now you've got $600,000 or $700,000. You can go buy a cheap house and live and start your life, and you're in really good shape. Except that the price of that house fell, and it was only worth $400,000. Now they can't sell the house because they owe $1 million on their loan, but the house is only worth $400,000. If they sell the house for $400,000, they owe $600,000. They're in the red by $600,000. Okay, so all these people got these cheap loans. For the first few years of these cheap loans, right, the early parts of the 2000s, these guys are making a lot of money, and they're selling their house, and they're buying, and everything's good. I have other friends who came here from California, quit their jobs, were unemployed, bought 3 houses, flipped them, lived for 2 years without jobs, quite nicely, because they made all this money by flipping these houses. But if you waited too long, if you did it at the end, the crash happens. Now you can't pay your mortgage off. You owe $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, $5,000 a month. And you maybe don't even make $2,000 a month. You are paying $300 a month to live in this house. Okay? The street that I live on, Countrywide was I bought my house brand new. Countrywide was the preferred lender for my community. I used a real bank to finance my house, but I was the only one on my street that did. Yeah. So my whole street, there's me and one other person whose house didn't go bankrupt. All the other houses on my street went into foreclosure. All of them, except for me and this one guy down the street. Because we were at the height, we were at the peak, and again, I sold my first house, I knew, right? And in fact, it was interviewed by the Las Vegas Sun, and they were talking about the housing market, and I had just sold my house, and I said, I just sold my house. And they said, my neighbors think I was crazy. And I said, no, if I don't sell it now, it's going to be 5 years before I can sell it. And I turned out to underestimate the length of the collapse, right? Because here we are, the collapse happened 2007, 8, 9. Here we are in 2020. house prices in most of Las Vegas have not gone back up to where they were in 2007. They're still low. Okay? So I bought my new house too soon. I sold my old house at just the right point, but I bought my new house too soon. Okay? But these people couldn't pay their houses off. They couldn't make their mortgage payments. They couldn't sell the house because if they sold the house, they'd end up in huge debt. So they just walked away. Okay? They just locked the door of their house and walked away. Or they lived in their house for 3 years and made no payments and waited for somebody to toss them out. Okay? Does this all make sense here now? And you see what's going to happen. This is a pyramid scheme. If the people on the right stop paying, this whole thing's going to fall apart.
There is no cause for alarm, but there probably will be.
All right. So the banks made bad loans, and they sold bad bonds based on the bad loans. They knew that things were bad. So how do they do this so that people don't figure it out? Well, come back over here. In my example, I'm matching this house right here with this bond right here. But we stopped doing that. What we do is we have 1,000 houses over here, and we take a little piece of each loan and make that bond with it from 1,000 houses. And then we take a little piece of each of those 1,000 loans, and we make this bond out of it. And then we take a little bit of each one of these loans, and we make this bond out of it. So the person who's buying the bond, there's no way they can figure out if the bond's worth it or not. There's no way they can go check out the mortgages because there's so many mortgages all tied together into their bond, little pieces of all these mortgages. Okay? So you use all these little pieces of thousands of mortgages to make one bond, and the investors have to trust. They have to have faith, which is a bad thing to have. Okay? So the banks go to this company called Moody's and pay Moody's a lot of money to rate their bonds. Moody's rates all their bonds at the very top rating. Why? Well, there's memos. And basically the memos say, we can't really figure out what's going on with these bonds because they're way complex. But the housing market never goes down, so they got to be good. Yeah. Okay. Now, let's make things worse. We have these things called credit default swaps. The folks on Wall Street, again, very creative, and they keep inventing new stuff. Now, credit default swaps are around a while, but the way they get used, there's a big explosion of them. Okay, so credit default. Credit default. That means somebody is defaulting on a loan or some other credit that they have. Okay? Credit default swap. A credit default swap is basically an insurance policy against a default on a credit obligation. Now let's understand how derivatives work, because it's a weird world we live in. Let's suppose that we know that one of your classmates is a bad driver, and everybody in class knows that he's a terrible driver. So we all think he's going to get in an accident. Okay? The law says he has to have car insurance, and so he's taking out his car insurance and he's paying the insurance company to insure his car. Well, it turns out that even though we don't own his car, we could take out insurance against him. It turns out you can bet on whether somebody is going to default on a mortgage, and you can take out insurance on their mortgage even though you don't own the house. Okay? Why would they do this? Well, from AIG's point of view, let's think about this. And so it was this American insurance group that was the big leader in this. But let's think about this. There's 180 people in our class. If car insurance for each person in the class, if that person who's a bad driver, let's say that they're paying, $3,000 a year in car insurance. Okay? That's their premium. They're paying $3,000 a year. Well, the insurance company, if all of us go take out insurance on that person's car, that's 180 people times $3,000. 180 people times $3,000. The insurance company is collecting $540,000 in premiums. Okay? So they're really happy. They're collecting all this money. And as long as that person doesn't get in an accident or a bad accident, everything's going to be fine. But now what happens? That person gets in an accident and there's $10,000 in damage to their car. Well, not only does the person who owned the car get the $10,000, but the rest of us get $10,000 too. Uh-oh. So the insurance company got $540,000 in insurance, but they're paying out premiums, but they're paying out $1.8 million. Everybody in the class gets $10,000 because that person had an accident. They got to pay out $1.8 million. They only took in $540,000. They're not happy now. Okay? So I'm a bank. I'm making bonds that I know suck. I know these bonds are bad. And maybe I know that home loan I made is bad. So I'm going to take out mortgage insurance on the home loan, and I'm going to take out a credit default swap on the bond. So the bank is going to wipe out all its risk. It's going to have an insurance company insure the house, the mortgage, and it's going to have an insurance company insure the bond. Okay? And because everybody thinks that houses and these mortgage-backed securities are good, they're not charging a lot of money for you to take out that insurance on the house or to take out that insurance on the bond. And so maybe instead of making $200 off of every house, the bank's making $190 off of every house, but it has no risk. If people stop paying, the insurance company is supposed to pay the bank so that the bank has no risk. Well, what if the insurance company can't afford to pay its obligations? Now the house is bad. The homeowner's in trouble. The bank's not getting paid. It can't pay its bondholders. The bondholder's in trouble. The bank's in trouble. The bank goes to the insurance company and says, pay. The insurance company says, I don't have any money. Now the insurance company is broke. So the insurance company is broke. The bank is broke. The homeowner's broke. The bondholder's broke. And the financial system's broke. Okay? Everybody with me? So, again, the banks have gotten rid of all their risk. And in the end, who's taking on that risk? The government is. If you don't understand this, you should. That the federal government U.S. government is the largest insurance company in the world. They insure people, when New Orleans floods, it's the federal government that pays off those homeowners for the floods, not their homeowners insurance. Okay? The federal government insures nuclear reactors. Nuclear power only exists because the federal government insures nuclear reactors. If private insurance companies had to pay for insurance, there would be no nuclear power companies, right? Nuclear power exists because the federal government insures it. So the Wall Street essentially passed the risk of all of this stuff in the end on to the federal government. Kind of without asking permission. So, remember our buddy Minsky, who's a student of Keynes. What would he say? Well, he said what happened in this market is animal spirits. Investors and banks believed that house prices couldn't fall. They all got caught up in buying houses after houses after houses after houses because they knew that prices could only go up. And, yeah, they learned their lesson that houses could go down. There was a crash. Okay? Or you can take the Hayek side. Hayek would say we had these really low interest rates and too much debt. That's going to create this malinvestment in houses. We built too many houses. Okay? Built too many houses, that's going to cause a crash. So either way, either one of these theories fits really well as to what happened. You can love either theory or both. House prices were a bubble. A bubble means that prices are above equilibrium, but they keep going up. So in a normal market, we expect that if prices are above equilibrium, there's a surplus and prices will come down. But in a bubble, prices are above equilibrium, but people don't understand that. They think they're still below equilibrium, and they keep going up. And at some point, they're going to crash back down to equilibrium. Okay?